Welcome back to the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery, and today I'm with a dear friend who I've known for many years. This person walked beside me and had a front row seat to the darkest time in my life. She was one of the key people involved in helping me rebuild my business and my life in 2015 after I had recently been fired. I went through a really hard time professionally and personally. We're going to talk about some of that today. We're also going to talk about leading up, how to lead when you don't have positional power, but you have personal power, authenticity, initiative, truth, and optimism. I'm with Lauren McCormick, executive leader in a Fortune 100 firm. Lauren is a CFP. She's a JD. She's a mom to 3 kiddos, a wife to Trevor. Lauren McCormick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. This is like, Jordan, one of those full circle moments that is so cool. We talked about 9 years ago, and it's like, this is awesome.
It's crazy. If you're listening, maybe you are in the season now or you've been there before where like it was the really, really hard time in your life where you had that friend, you had somebody you could vent to. Maybe you're venting to them now and you're like, I call them every day, or sometimes it's twice a day. We have to have these long conversations and I have to get things out. And like they just listen and they're there for me and they're radically generous and I'm not sure why. Okay, Lauren McCormick was this person for me. So she saw all sides of my leadership. And Lauren, I want to let our listeners in to our first conversation. Here I am, this really broken down and out, super disappointed and also embarrassed 27-year-old. And I met you for the first time and I was like, oh, Lauren, great to meet you. Excited to be here. I'm so excited for our partnership. This is going to be great. And you responded with, you just don't remotely sound like an authentic version of yourself. And you were able to pick up on that right away. You have a radar for people who are inauthentic. I want you to talk to me about that conversation. Do you remember it? And if so, what were the cues to you that I wasn't being an authentic version of myself?
I could replay that conversation like it was a video in my head. So I knew you were going through something that was really difficult at the time. And you were so overly positive. And I love your positivity. That is how you're wired. But in that moment, the way you were showing up didn't feel like it reflected where you were at that moment in your life. And we needed to build trust really quickly. We were in this partnership together and as you were rebuilding. And so the way to do that, I knew, was for me to be real with you on what I need from you and you to be real with me on what you need from me. And so I knew that was an opportunity to level set and set the tone for what our relationship needed to be over that time. And it's fun because it's kind of, I feel like, really set the tone and carried our relationship the last 9 years. But we needed to be truth tellers for each other.
I don't know if I'm like excited that you remember it or like I was kind of hoping you forgot about it because it was a really awkward time, for me. That was an awkward conversation. But you were such a good friend to me. Like you went way above and beyond to care for me. Like some days you were the therapist, some days you were the counselor. You were really just supposed to be like my compliance officer and make sure that I did things the right way. But let's stay with authenticity here for just a second. How do you know if someone's being authentic? I mean, we live in a world that's really artificial and fake. You've got a radar for this kind of thing. Like, how do you know if somebody's being the true and real version of themselves?
I think the easy answer is they do what they say they're going to do. They show up, they walk the talk, but you also have to assess real time. Like, do their actions and their words align with their reality? What's actually happening right now in their life, in their business? Are they saying things are great when they're not? Are they giving people compliments when they don't mean it? And so I just believe in the power of being authentic and how that brings the best out of people because we can get to the root cause quicker when we know what the issue is.
Lauren, I remember a season where I was, spending time with you and with Tim Bohannon, a mutual friend and mentor of ours, who was also incredibly generous to me during that season. He would always say, don't tell me, show me. Like I want your actions to speak so loud that people can't hear your words. What are the actions though? Like, what are you looking for? Like when you promote a leader, when you hire a leader, like what are the things that you're looking for in a leader who is authentic?
I think the number one trait in any leader is self-awareness. And that self-awareness to me is the basis of EQ, emotional intelligence. And it starts with, what are your values and what are your beliefs? First of all, you have to know what they are. But then, are you able to really objectively assess, am I living by them? What are my opportunities to get better? None of us are running a race of perfection. I don't care who you are. But can you actually hold up the mirror and say, okay, am I living how I should be? Are my actions aligned with what I believe? And I think part of that is just, how do you assess how other people are experiencing you? Who are you getting feedback from? Not just your raving fans, but are you asking the people that you don't have the strongest relationships how you can show up better for them?
I think one of the best questions is, what is it like to be on the other side of me? And that's a question that I clearly was not asking when we first met. But I love your comment about self-awareness. I think it takes a lot of energy and effort. I'm not sure that self-awareness is something that happens on its own. I think it takes like tools and coaching. Like, how are you growing? Like, what are you doing to grow in your self-awareness? And then like, how are you developing other leaders to also grow in that area of their leadership?
I think the first thing is, who are you surrounding yourself with? I think about that all the time. So you are going to be the people, you will become the people that you interact with the most. We just get energy, learn, grow from the people around us, positively or negatively. And so for myself, I look at, who am I surrounding myself with? Are they honest? Are they authentic? Do they have integrity? Are they truth tellers? We all need those in our life. A few months ago, one of my best friends said to me, you are the friend that tells me what I need to hear, even when I don't want to hear it. And I think that's one of the best compliments you can get as a friend, as a leader, because you want to surround yourself with people that lift you up, but you also want those people to love you enough to tell you the truth. And so when I'm growing leaders, I aspire to be that person to them. I want them to be that person to me. Leadership is a two-way street. It's not hierarchy. And it starts with, how can we be authentic and truth tellers to each other?
Okay, so this is a great segue, because we have a lot of emerging leaders who are listening to this call who want to grow in their influence. I think so often we talk about leading down or leading, horizontally across an organization. We very seldom talk about leading up. Like, our culture today doesn't talk about this idea of like leading the leaders. Like, how do you support, how do you grow your opportunity, but also impact the organization at large, even when you're not asked to? And to your earlier point, like, you're the friend that goes above and beyond, like even in giving feedback or sharing truth or taking initiative. Like, a hallmark of your leadership journey has been that you're willing to do stuff that others don't do. And when you do things others don't do, you have influence that others don't have. So I want to talk a little bit about initiative. You coach a lot of young leaders. You're still on the really the earlier end. For somebody in your position, you've got a lot of years ahead of you of leading. Like, what's it been like for you to go above and beyond? What are the things that you think about when you're taking initiative and leading up inside of the organization?
I have been blessed to always work with leaders that didn't see hierarchy. And so they would get in the weeds with me. I would say, how are you getting dirty with people, right? How are you getting in it with them? Sitting on the same side of the table as them. This feeling of, we're in this together, whether they're up, below. I just believe that everyone in the room can add value, and they all have different perspectives.
Yes.
And so how do we get perspectives and listen? Because when we're only looking at the people that we see above us, we are missing out on incredible feedback and opportunity from everyone there. And an organization, a company, it is not built by the people on top. It's led by the people, maybe. But it is built, it is the ecosystem, the culture is every single person that's part of it. And we need to make sure that we are listening, getting feedback from everyone. I also think this reminds me, I recently heard Kevin Eastman speak, and I know he's been on your podcast before. And he had this great quote. He said, there are really three ways to lead people. You can get behind them and push them. You can get in front of them and pull them. Or you can put your arm around them, hip to hip, and walk with them. And so when there is an issue, jump into it. Doesn't matter if it's an issue at the executive table. It doesn't matter if it's an issue that is at another team that is layers below you. What's happening? Get feedback, ask questions. How can I help? And jump in head first.
Yeah, I think about this idea of taking responsibility outside the lane of your authority. So like, it's not necessarily my job, but I'm willing to participate. Or it's not my mess, but I'm willing to clean it up. Like I wasn't assigned to that, but I'll take care of it. And actually our relationship going back 9 years ago, like that was really your posture with me. Like you were technically just supposed to be my compliance officer and make sure that I stayed inside the guardrails and like did things the right way. But all of a sudden you became like a friend, a counselor and a therapist and a coach. And like, you were just there for me in such a really unique way. And I view you different because of that. Like I think about where our relationship is today, and it's a different relationship because of the friend that you decided to be to me all those years ago that you didn't have to be. Part of going above and beyond in that season was sharing truth and being a truth teller. You talked about that earlier. I want to go a little deeper on truth, because we live in a world where dishonest harmony is so prevalent, right? Like this idea that honest conflict holds more social value than dishonest harmony, that should be on your wall in your office because you live that out. Like you fight for tension, you're willing to go there with people. So many people aren't. So let's get practical about how you become a truth teller. Like what are some things that a person can do or say to provide more truth in an organization? And to be clear, if you're leading up, this is really hard to do. It's like, how do I give that feedback to this person who is technically in charge of the department or is over me or is, because you could give feedback to a broken 27-year-old Jordan Montgomery. I've watched you give feedback to some senior leaders who are very experienced, very seasoned. So how do we do that well? And how can we be effective in leading up while sharing truth?
I love Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. And on the very base of his pyramid, he talks about trust. But it's not just trust, it's vulnerability-based trust.
Yeah.
And it starts there. And it starts by being vulnerable, asking for feedback. And one of my current leader, one of the people that I've had the privilege to work with, BJ Hellier, the first day that he became managing partner, I was sitting in his office and he said, I need you to promise me you're always going to tell me the truth. Even on the days that are hard, I need you to tell me the truth. And the fact that he even opened the door to allow that to happen is so meaningful. And so much of it, it's like, are we opening the door to ask for that feedback? Are we welcoming it? And then what's our response when we get it? Because it's really hard sometimes to get feedback that we don't want to hear. And so how can we prepare ourselves to better be equipped and give, not only give that feedback, but get that feedback from others? And it starts at the top, and it starts with asking for it from others.
It's really good. So I've learned this from BJ too. He's been a really effective leader for a long time. I think we have to get specific when we ask feedback, like this idea that specific questions leads to a specific response. And I think you'll agree with this, Lauren, but part of the issue that we have in our feedback culture is we ask for really vague feedback. So, unless you have a deep relationship with someone, if I were to reach out to somebody after a presentation, for example, and I said, hey, can I get some feedback on that presentation? If they said, well, here's 5 things that I didn't like that I would change, that would be socially awkward. So it's important on my part. I got to be like, hey, I'm working on my craft as a communicator. One of the things I'm working on is my tonality or my pace or storytelling. Like, would you mind speaking into that? Like, how did you receive those parts of my talk today? Now it becomes a much easier conversation and dialogue to enter into that type of feedback because I've given somebody a license to share very specific feedback with me. A vague question leads to a vague response. The other thing I think about though is BJ is really good about sharing, and you're good at sharing the feedback that was given to you. So I want you to riff on this a little bit and go a little deeper, because I think part of a leader being open to feedback is publicly discussing or communicating, I got feedback from this person. It's been really helpful. I wanted to share it with you and talk about how it changed or influenced our organization. I watched you do this. How can leaders do this? When should they do it? when shouldn't they do it? Like, how are you going about sharing the feedback that you've received over time with the people around you?
I think how I'm going about it is I believe in just sharing what that is with the team. So if I've gotten feedback or I've just realized I have a opportunity to do better here, or I didn't serve you well here, I will speak it to the group. I want them to hear it. I want them to know it, because I want them to do the same thing for themselves. We are better when we are honest with what's happening, where our opportunities and strengths are. And I want them to see it from me so they can live that out. The other thing that I love doing is giving uncomfortable feedback a regular part of your practice. How do you integrate that into the experience of your team? We were lucky to work with, our leadership team worked with an outside coach a couple years ago, and he had us do an exercise. And he said, all right, I want everyone in the room first write down what is let's say it's just you and me, Jordan. Jordan, you're in the hot seat. Lauren, I want you to write down for Jordan, what is the thing you admire most about him, his greatest strength? And then the second question I want you to answer is, what must he stop or start doing for the benefit of the organization? And when you are sitting in a room with your peers and your leadership team, and you're getting that feedback, it's humbling. And it's also, I found that you usually never get feedback that you don't already know about yourself. But when you hear someone else say it, you realize, okay, this is noticeable. It's opportunity. I got to make change. And then what happens in that room is at the end of this exercise, we commit to each other. What are we going to do over the next 90 days based on all the feedback we got to get better together? And then 90 days later, we sat in that room and we went around and they'd say, Lauren, how did Jordan do on what he committed? They didn't ask you for the feedback. They asked everyone else. And I think making that a part of your regular interaction with your team really helps build that vulnerability-based trust. They believe they can give the people feedback. I think that is so necessary. We need to encourage people to be truth tellers to each other when something's not on the line, so that when something is on the line, we are better able to step up and respond.
So perfectly said. I think that we don't create the space and place to do feedback. And because it's not a regular rhythm and it's not a consistent part of what we do or who we are, when we give it, it feels critical. So I think for anyone listening, I think the goal, whether you work in the financial services industry or an industry like mine or the construction industry, it doesn't matter what you do. I think the goal is to have a culture of honest, timely, and helpful feedback, which means you have to do it consistently. And you got to be able to get feedback when things aren't on fire in just the regular rhythm of a day or a week. So I love what you said about creating space and grace and then having some scripted kind of questions or a structure to feedback. And some people are hearing that and they're like, oh, that feels like overdone. I'm going to say this is just a belief of mine. Feedback should be overdone. Most people aren't receiving near enough feedback. And so because of that, they live in a world that's dishonestly harmonious and they're not really saying what they feel and they don't really feel what they say, which is so damaging to a team and damaging to relationships over time. Okay, we're going to land this plane. I think one of your most underrated qualities, Lauren, as a leader is your optimism, because you are a truth teller and you are real and you're really candid. And so I think sometimes that can overshadow like your positivity or your optimism. We're talking about leading up today. We talked about authenticity, we talked about initiative, talked about truth. But I want to land this plane letting our people know that you were one of the most optimistic people in my life in one of the darkest seasons of my life. And you just believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And so many times I would ask you questions like, Lauren, do you think this is going to be okay? Or Lauren, like, do you think I'll ever get back to where I was? And I just remember some of the most difficult days sitting in your office and you were just kind to me and you were good to me and you were very real and you challenged me, but you also believed in me and you were kind and you were optimistic. It's been said that a leader's job is to see the person for who they could be not for who they are today. Talk to us about how you're doing that in your leadership journey, because I know you're working with some of the Jordan Montgomerys of the world who are overexposed and underdeveloped, and they've got work to do. That's hard to see the good in people who are frustrating or challenging or falling short or making mistakes. Talk to us about how you deposit belief into people who are falling short.
I think it's important to remember that everybody has a story. We're not our worst day. We're not our best day. We're not our most proudest accomplishment. We're not what we carry the most shame about. And you and I have talked about this before, Jordan. How you come out of that and how you respond matters. The strongest version of ourselves is not born in the light, it's born in the darkness. And when we're going through struggles, difficult times, and overcoming them, that's what shapes us to be a better version of ourselves. But it also allows us to show up for others, to be the person that we needed when we were in their shoes. And so I think just reframing, life is not always positive. We're always going to have difficulties and struggles. It doesn't matter who you are. And if you can look at the struggles from a place of, I will get through this, and I know when I'm through this, I'm going to be a better version of myself. And I will be able to use this as a tool to show up for others around me. There's so much power in that.
We all have a story. And oftentimes we have a story that not everybody knows a lot about. And, I talk about this now publicly, but there was a period of my life where it was incredibly private. And you chose to believe in me at a time where not a lot of people knew what I was going through, at least not in the type of deep way that you knew about it. I think like I was still kind of putting off that bravado of like, I'm going to be okay and it's going to be fine. But behind that, I was really, really hurting. I want people to hear this. I left Minnesota because I met a girl who's not my wife. Her name's Ashley. And what that meant for you all is you had invested a great deal of time and energy into a broken young man. I mean, I'm talking like thousands of hours, just so our listeners know. Like this was like a 2-year project to help me rebuild not just my business, but my life. Like a lot of resources, tons of time and energy. And then I came to you and Tim Bohannon and BJ Hellier one day and I said like, hey, I actually think I need to move back to Iowa to pursue this relationship. And I was fully prepared for you to say, you can't do that yet, or okay, but you owe us a lot of money. Like I felt so guilty. I remember just the weight of that conversation. I couldn't even get the words out because I felt so guilty that like you had been so generous and now I was leaving to go back home. The sentence or the quote that I often use to describe your leadership and Tim's leadership and BJ's leadership during that time is like, you can tell a lot about a person watching them care for people who can no longer do anything for them. So here I was moving away and it meant, I think, a loss for the organization. Like there's I'm gone. So I can't really add value anymore. And you had just poured everything you had into me. Lauren, I want to say this to you. You have such great character. Tim and BJ operated out of a place of abundance and care and caution for me. And I do believe that if there's a young leader listening, I think you agree with this, if there's one thing a young leader needs to work on, it's their character. You displayed and BJ displayed and Tim displayed such great character with me during that season. We'll end with this final question. I just believe that the truest test of character in a person is how they treat those who can no longer do anything for them. I want to know what that quote means to you.
Jordan, that makes me think about our journey and the 2 years that we spent together in the same office. And for you, that was 2 years in the darkness. You talked about some of your hardest, most difficult times. And I think what a gift it is to be able to show up for people when they can't show up for themselves. And how to be that arm around each other, hip to hip. We're going to pull each other through this and get through it together. That's a gift. And when I think about you and I think about Tim Bohannon, BJ Hellier, they care. They were incredible leaders to me, because they care more about the legacy. And the legacy is not about the award, the accolade. It is about the people. And I believe legacies are built and grown and most impactful when you can have a meaningful impact on people around you, because it's multiplying and it's enduring.
Wow. I appreciate, Lauren, your support, your friendship, all the value that you've added to my life. Love who you are, what you stand for, and I'm so thankful that you decided to join the Growth Over Goals podcast today to help us all get better, myself included. Thank you for listening. If you're tuning in, this has been another episode of the Growth Over Goals podcast. And again, I want to say thank you to Lauren McCormick for your investment of time and energy into our community. I also want to say thanks to our friends at Storyline Multimedia for producing this episode and all the great work that they do behind the scenes. If you have found value in this episode, would you rate it, like it, share it with a friend? We would love to increase our mission of impact and our probability of reaching more people. So we so much appreciate your advocacy. And until next time, be well, be great. Have an awesome day.